All right. Good morning. Good morning. We have, let's see, who do we have? We have about 37 people here. That is fantastic for a Friday morning. I'm so excited. Um, and I see a lot of friends in there. So that's also really exciting. Um, we're go ahead and going to get started. Thank you for joining us, everybody, for the webinar series, um, Redesigning with Equity and Careers in Mind. I'm going to put in the chat right now where you can access the recording of the webinar last Friday. So we had a panelist, some distinguished panelists, including Jackie Cruz, who's with us today. We had Hannah Lair from CCRC sharing some really amazing research that they've done. And then today, the focus for all the breakouts is on strategies that colleges are using to kind of disrupt the stratification of you know, program enrollment and program completion that we see that's stratified by race, by gender, by economic status. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go on. I am with the Career Ladders Project. We're organizing this event with funding from the Chancellor's Office. We're a nonprofit. We're based in Oakland, but we're all over the state. I'm in LA. And we work with community college redesign for equity. And I think a lot of folks know us. You can always contact us if you want some support in any of your guided pathways work, or just call us up. And we have some program outcomes that are up here, exploring key considerations for preparing students working in this crazy economy, considering the racial and gender disparities, sorry about that, that we see in program and career choice, and learning what colleges can and are doing to disrupt these disparities. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into an exercise. Now, I'm sure that the folks on the line are familiar with Jamboard. You're all in community college world. You've probably used Jamboard, but we're going to go into that. And you might also remember that Jamboard has a limit of how many people can participate. So I'm going to put a giant long message in the chat. And there are 5 Jamboard rooms in there, 5 rooms. And go ahead and go into those. I'm going to scroll through some of the rooms that we're going to share. And share in that Jamboard. And so they're divided by your last name. Does that make sense? So if your last name is M, you would go to the link under Jamboard number 3. But I have the initials there. And we want you to share a personal story of a person or a program that helped you on your educational journey. I'll go ahead and put those in again in just a second for our colleagues who are just joining us. But let's go to some of these Jamboards. I see some people in there right now. This is fantastic. We'll spend just a few minutes, and I'll scroll through some of the different Jamboards. But yeah, how'd you get here? And I'm wondering, while they're doing this, maybe Ellen and Jackie, do you want to just verbally share, was there a person or a program that helped you to get to where you are? Go ahead and unmute.
I can start first, Jackie. Would you like me to start?
Thank you, Ellen. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Ellen Murray. I'm the director of the Promise Scholars program at Skyline College. I would say that the person that helped me the most was a English professor, Stacy Pies. She taught me in my very first semester of college in a moment where I was feeling very much like an imposter, 100% feeling those feelings of imposter syndrome, like I didn't belong, wasn't really feeling very connected to anyone at the college. And she really just, I think, noticed immediately that I was, struggling, and brought me in and taught me what, what to do in terms of communicating with faculty, worked with me on, basic things like grammar. I went to a high school that really didn't prepare me fully for college level English. And so she really was that helping hand in that first semester when I most needed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, did you have somebody?
Yes, I had a lot of people, Naomi, and good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us. My family struggled a lot. My parents both struggled with drug addiction. So growing up, I pretty much had the people in my life, teachers that ended up sort of being role models for me. The first one was a fifth grade teacher, Mr. Gilkey, who kind of wanted to support my sisters and I. I have 4 sisters, no brothers. And they would help us a lot with, from anywhere from the Christmas shopping programs during the end of the year to just supporting us in any kind of way. And then growing up, as far as college goes, when I started attending Hartnell, I had 2 of my instructors that just really took their time and believed in me and just had the most inspiring comments to me. I thought, wow, they really do believe in me. So that was great. And I have a lot more people, but definitely I think mentorship for me and support from in the education sector particularly has been beyond what a traditional appreciation, a traditional role. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just highlight some of these. These are really beautiful stories here. A lot of folks are talking about a mentor or an instructor. Here's one where they're talking about a CTE program, Job Corps, personal mentor, a counselor, industrial tech high school pathway. That sounds like a really exciting program. Another mentor, clubs, American Marketing Association, great work-based experience. A summer bridge program at Mount SAC. Here we go. The program that helped me was EOP&S. Yes, that's so fantastic. At my college, we had a cross-cultural center that became my home. Oh my gosh, so many, not school related, but my family was my biggest support, an undergrad advisor. There was a math professor that took an interest. I was a president of a student organization as a first gen self-finance college student. From my family, I had to find my own motivation. I wish you had been my student. We would have found you some mentors and some programs. My algebra teacher at Orange Coast College, the Career Center director at the community college I attended. Oh my gosh, these are all so incredibly beautiful. Feel free to keep sharing those. We will collect all of these and I'll make some new jam boards. But now we're going to head back to our presentation. So thank you for that. And that kind of brings us to this, the whole focus of this presentation, which is about cohorts and as ways to really help students connect to college for support, for community, for all sorts of things. And so I'm very, very, very pleased today to have Jackie Cruz with us. She's a vice president at the Hartnell College Foundation. She runs out and collects resources from far and wide to help these amazing programs, but she's also incredibly hands-on and helps to develop the programs themselves. And then we have Ellen Murray, who's the director of the Scholar Promise program at Skyline. And Skyline's Scholar Promise program is just, it's really like a keystone for so many of the wonderful things that happen at Skyline. And there's such a great example of integration of all of these different touch points. And so they're both going to talk about that a little bit more. Oops, we have another, okay, we've got 2 CLP slides. This is us again. We're going to do a very quick poll. And here we go. So we're just asking about cohorts at your college. So we have 3 different responses to just kind of gauge what are the cohorts like at your college. Are there no cohorts on campus? Are there a few different programs with small cohorts? Are there many different programs? Oops, it looks like it got cut off with cohorts, or are they scaled at your campus? So we'll give folks a few minutes for that. All right. Almost everybody's voted. Let's give a few more seconds here. So far, it's looking like the second one. There's a few programs at most places with some small cohorts. In just about a minute. All right. There you go. Yep, that one kind of overwhelmingly. That's where folks seem to land. There's a few different programs with small cohorts. Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. And just taking the temperature across the state, it seems to be that is the case. So first up, we're going to hear about the CSN3 program at Hartnell. Then we're going to hear about the Scholars Promise program at Skyline. And then we're going to have a lot of time for questions and interactions. So Jackie, go ahead and take it away. And tell me when you'd like me to advance the slides.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I can't close out of that. Okay, perfect. Oh, well, great. Thank you for the invitation to CLP, and thank you all for joining us again. I hope that this session will allow us to learn from each other. We do have the space for us to share, so that'll be wonderful. We want to learn from you as well. So the CSN3 program was inspired by a philanthropist, actually, Mr. Andy Matsui, came from Japan with 30 bucks in his pocket. He came here, though, through a vocational agriculture exchange program with United States and Japan. And he decided to stay here and, to build a business here around flowers. So I think mostly it was carnations and then roses and ultimately orchids. And now he's one of the largest orchid growers in the world. And so he had been giving scholarships for about 18 years to our local schools. One scholarship, $40,000 scholarship per school. And what he noticed was that the students that were going on, even with his $40,000, they weren't completing because it was taking them too long. And so he spoke to us and our president and said, what can you do? Can you do anything about this? Can you help our students complete sooner? Can you help them, be able to be successful without running out of all this money that they're getting both from me and other sources? And so the conversation really was around what career field was in high demand based on data, and what career field could we build something that would be an accelerated cohort or accelerated baccalaureate degree. Computer science was what we ended up with. Mainly due to our faculty champion, Joe Welsh, who is the co-founder of CSN3 and one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world. He believes in our students so much, and he just believes in always sort of challenge ourselves in the way we do things, and trying to always think about the student and their benefit. And so he put together a program that was a 3-year bachelor degree in computer science. He was actually also teaching at CSUMB and the Naval Postgraduate School. So he was a teacher in 3 different institutions of higher ed with computer science. And he found a willing partner at CSU Monterey Bay, Dr. Satya Narayan. And they both put together a program that I'm going to describe in just a few seconds here. If you could advance, please, Naomi. So here are the design principles of the cohort. The first thing is that all of the courses and the course sequence is pre-designed, and all of the students go into the cohort together. They start together and they end together. So it is a pathway that completely takes out the guessing from the equation, as well as the registration complexity, and as well as the transfer complexity. So the program, once the students come into the program, they are otters and they're panthers. So they're panther otters right from the get-go. And they know that because the CSU people and the Hartnell people get together and they do a welcome orientation together. And the students are actually taking CSUMB classes, at least one class, right when they start, and then they take more classes as they progress. So the entire program is 16 months at Hartnell, but taking already some classes at CSUMB, and then they transfer over to CSUMB completely after the 16 months. Another aspect of this that's really incredible and helpful to the student is the piece around the registration and all of that, sort of the red tape, if you will. All of that is done by the staff. So once the students are admitted into the program, that is more of, it's more case management on the side of the staff, and that is seamless administrative support. And so they actually don't have to like apply for transfer. None of that stuff happens in this cohort. Like they're in and they're in. They're in at Hartnell, they're in at CSUMB. And so then the other part of it is the financial scholarship. So at the beginning of the journey, Mr. Matsui pledged $30,000 per student, so that the students wouldn't have to work, because this program is year round, and it is a complete set of units. I want to say it's anywhere 17 or more, 21 maybe. So it's a very intense program. And so we wanted to alleviate that stress of our students having to work to make ends meet. As you know, well, at least for our school in our district, we have 85% low income students. And so most of our students have to work one or two little jobs or big jobs to support their families. So that took that out of the sort of the stress factor. And then further on, we were able to reduce the amount of the scholarship so that we could help more students, but also so that the program could be sustainable. So right now that scholarship is actually 15,000, not 30,000, because we were actually kind of impacting their financial aid because they were over awarded. So we started with a really high scholarship, and now we've right-sized it to $15,000, and that more than covers. So the entire cost of the degree with Hartnell and CSUMB is $11,400, which for a computer science degree, I think that is probably the best deal you can get anywhere. So the idea is having the students be debt-free when they graduate. And so the academic support success, that's another aspect of the cohort. So on Fridays, the students have cohort enrichment, and that is all about building teams and actively engaging in problem solving, not just at the academic level, but also at the social level. So they have peer-led teams. Each student that's in the cohort will be a leader of the team during the program. So they rotate leaders. And the idea there is we're not going to leave anybody behind. And if somebody in the cohort is struggling, we're going to help them. And so Fridays is really about more personal, social enrichment and support to build a family, within the cohort. And again, the integrated curriculum, I already spoke about that. On the college readiness side, so what we do now with AB 705 and dual enrollment, this is actually getting a lot better and a lot more simple and sustainable and scalable. Before, pre AB 705 and pre dual enrollment, we had to do these very intense, we call them math intensives during the summer. And we still do them, but it's a whole different ball game now, I think, with the new legislation. So basically, students that come into the program have a summer intensive program. They do a lot of work on Alex, and they do a lot of work on these so systematized softwares that allow the instructors to sort of gauge the preparation of the student. They do have to be calculus ready by the time they enter the fall. And so the summer math intensive program is to get all the students at the same sort of level playing field before the fall. And that really has helped out. But now with dual enrollment, we could do a lot more in preparation with the schools, and College Future is actually going to fund us to do more dual enrollment in computer science, in I think the health career pathway that we have, as well as the teacher pathway. So more to come on that. As far as the high expectations and growth mindset, we believe that the high expectations met with high support level is what is helping our students succeed. So while the students are in the program, they're required to get involved with more than just their academics. And that's because from what we hear with working with our employers and the industry is that sometimes they're not really looking at hiring the highest GPA. They're really looking at hiring the students that go above and beyond their call of duty. So, what else have you done that you weren't actually obligated to do? So that's the question: is what sort of kind of work ethics and motivation do you have that you would go above and beyond? And so that is something that we talk to the students about. Is that's what the market out there is really looking for. They're looking for, they say unicorns, but really it's about the type of person that they're looking for to be part of their sector and their company. And so we have a lot of exposure to the industry. We actually have had Salesforce come and interview students from the cohort. We've had several of the industry partners really work with us on developing the curriculum, as well as helping us develop the soft skills, or the other part of the equation here, not just the academics. So they have required study time. They get involved with social projects and community projects, and they have to do an internship in year 2. And then the last piece I want to talk about is the evaluation and research. There's always a consistent focus. At the end of each semester, we gather with the partners, both CSUMB and Hartnell. Well, they actually meet very frequently, the staff and the faculty. But as far as sort of the bigger advocacy group, both presidents, provost, and everybody involved, there's always sort of a update on the program and where it's headed, and that kind of thing. And there's always a lot of evaluation and thought going into it. So let's see, I think I covered most of the elements. Do you want to go to the next slide real quick, and I'll wrap up my comments with that? So here are the program outcomes for the cohort. So we've had 8 cohorts. We're 93% underrepresented minorities, with 33.5% females, 74% underrepresented minorities with first generation, and the 67.4% first generation, I already said that, and then 85% associate's degree in 1.5 years, and then 74% graduation in 3 years, 77% graduation in 4 years. So a few students don't make it right on the 3-year mark. And then 57% have completed internships by the senior year. And then almost 35% or 34% is employed before graduation. So the 93%, I just saw that I duplicated a data point. The 93% underrepresented minority was updated. The 74% is an outdated number, just to make sure that we're on the same page on that. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, this here is, we're just keeping track of the footprint that the CS3 program and our programs are having on the whole CSU system as far as computer science graduates. And so this is just an example of that shows how we have grown in representation of computer science graduates in the entire system, how we've grown in female computer science graduates in the system, and then what are we doing within the Latino and Latinx computer science graduates within the CSU system. One point that I'll make that I've mentioned before in another conference is there's 66,000 jobs for CS, but the systems, colleges, community colleges, UCs and CSUs are only able, have the capacity to produce 6,600 graduates. So we don't have the capacity to meet the demand that's out there right now. And so I just want to put a plug for folks that are thinking about program development. CS is definitely an area that's well paid and needs more talent. Those are my comments. I don't know if you have any questions.
I was actually going to ask folks to hold on to their questions till the end, and then we can frame them more in the overarching idea of cohorts.
Yes.
But Jackie, thank you so much, and I so appreciate the data too that shows how just this program is moving the needle for the whole CSU system. It's incredible. So now we're going to hand it over to Ellen. Ellen, can you talk us through the Promise Scholars Program? And just let me know when you want me to move your slides.
Absolutely. And Jackie, I'm so envious of your program. We'll have to touch base later on too about how to get that over at Skyline.
Ditto on yours. Yeah, ditto.
So the Promise Scholars Program at Skyline College was originally developed back in 2016 as a core component of the college's comprehensive redesign, which also included the implementation of guided pathways and transformative teaching and learning. And this arose due to a variety of different challenges, but the core challenge with the Promise Scholars Program was that when we looked at our data across our institution, we saw that about 4% to 6% over the course of the last 10 years of first-time full-time students were graduating within 2 years, and about 14% were able to graduate within 3. And that was sort of some of the brutal facts for us, that we weren't supporting our students to timely completion, and we really needed to overhaul and rethink our systems in really intentional, student-ready ways. So the Promise Scholars Program is a 3-year commitment to our first-time student population who are degree or certificate seeking. The program replicates the Accelerated Studies and Associate Programs, the ASAP model, which was originally developed in the City University of New York, the CUNY system, about a little more than a decade ago. And the ASAP model has been replicated in Ohio. It's being replicated in Tennessee, as well as Westchester. And across both RCT and longitudinal evaluations, the ASAP model has proven to double the 2-year and 3-year graduation rates for participating students. And as a result, in CUNY, it has really rapidly expanded and scaled across its system. They serve more than 25,000 students a year entering into those cohorts. And so that was one of the things that we looked at when we were searching for what to implement at Skyline, something that was really proven effective, as well as something that was proven to scale successfully. Naomi, you can go to the next slide. So there are a few core elements of the Promise Scholars program. So students must be degree or certificate seeking first-time students who can commit to full-time study. And Skyline, as well as our San Mateo County Community College District, has prioritized students who are coming from low-income backgrounds, who are first-generation college students, and then we also prioritize our homeless and foster students in each of our entering cohorts. The core program benefits include financial support. So we cover fee waivers, and specifically, we cover the gap after CCPG is applied, but before Pell, if they're eligible for either. If not, we cover the full enrollment fee. We cover book vouchers, and we give them about, it's $750 annually, but we break it up over the course of the semester. And then monthly transportation incentives. So we provide $50 a month as long as they are completing their engagement contacts with our counselors and with our program each month. And that is a financial commitment for the full 3 years or up until they graduate. The second core benefit we have is academic support. So students receive pretty intensive onboarding from the moment that they are accepted into the program. So they will meet with their counselor over the summer prior to starting college. We also have a Promise Scholar Summer Institute that all new students are required to attend. It has it's evolved, but it's generally a 3-day onboarding experience for all students. It includes a lot of community building, counseling, and a lot of guest speakers and presentations from core areas and programs across our campus, including career development, transfer center, tutoring, etc. We also have cohort-specific courses and priority registration and required tutoring for students, as well as an early alert system with our cohorted Promise Block classes. The third core benefit of the program is our counseling support. So we have a really small ratio of 150 students to 1 counselor. We also have additional program staff, our peer leaders, as well as our amazing retention specialists who work with students outside of the counseling student relationship. We operate under a tiered support counseling model, which basically means our counselors each semester, at the end of the semester, once grades are in, look back at their case notes, they look at the students' academic performance, and essentially put students in different support tiers for the next semester, meaning that for students who might be struggling either personally or academically, they will come in and see their counselor much more frequently than a student who might not have a ton of personal or academic challenges. That means that we really focus and are intentional about how we spend our time with students so that the students who might be facing more challenges have more access to support throughout the semester. And then lastly, we have plenty of community building group counseling sessions. We collaborate across the campus, and we have career and professional development benchmarks for students to meet along the way so that they are prepared for their next step after they leave Skyline College. Go to the next slide. So in terms of how we scaled this program, we began with 2 pilot cohorts that were 1-year scholarships plus counseling in 2016 and 2017. So we started in 2016 with 139 scholars, and that was really operating off of private foundation money. So we were really just accepting as many students as we had funding for at that point. In 2017, we were able to raise a little bit more private funding and then also received a Laura and John Arnold grant to prepare for the replication of the ASOP model for the 2018 cohort. In 2018, we accepted 507 Skyline scholars into our cohort under full ASAP replication. So that 3-year commitment with all of those core benefits that I discussed previously. And in 2019, we expanded to our steady state of 750 scholars at Skyline College. And in between 2018 and 2019, we received a Chancellor's Innovation Grant to ensure that we could replicate the ASAP model not only at Skyline, but at our sister campuses, Kenyatta and College of San Mateo. So across the district, we were supporting in 2019, 2,000 students under ASAP replication. And that's our steady state now for 2020 and moving forward into the 2021 cohort. Can you go to the next slide? So I just wanted to note some of our Prom Scholars demographics at Skyline College, and this is true of our sister campuses too, because we prioritize students who are low income, foster homeless, and first generation. We do support more of our low income students proportionally across the campus. We have a greater proportion of Latinx students in our cohort versus campus demographics, and a much greater proportion of first generation college students across the campus. Approximately 82% of our Promise Scholars are eligible for CCPG, and the vast majority of our students come from directly from our feeder high schools, including continuation and adult schools within those districts. So really wanted to lay the foundation there. You can go on to the next slide. And these are some of our early successes. So beginning with our fall 2018 cohort, who were under the ASAP replication, that they were our inaugural cohort for our 3-year commitment. You'll see that our retention has been really, really strong from the first semester to second and second to third, as well as unit accumulation. What we're really excited about though is our fall 2018 cohort just finished their 2-year experience in the program. And while our historical graduation rate within 2 years hovered between 4 and 6%, we're comparing to fall 2016 at a 4.5 to earn an AAAS or ADT. Our Promise Scholars graduated at a 19.5% rate. So really quadrupling the 2-year graduation rate with our inaugural cohort. An additional 9% transferred and 2% received certificates. So we are really impacting the college-wide graduation rate and the lives of all of our scholars, right, and their families. And so we are really excited to see what's to come for our fall 19 and fall 2020 cohort as well. And they're all on track to meet or exceed this graduation rate as well, despite challenges with the pandemic. So I did before just going into the Q&A, and I know I should keep an eye on time. I did want to just mention that our program was really intentional about making sure that Promise wasn't replacing all the amazing wonderful support programs that we already had on campus. So EOPS and TRIO and learning communities. We partner intentionally with those cohort programs and make sure that the largest proportion of our entering students are receiving some kind of support or multiple shared support. So do want to mention that because I think that has been really critical to our success, not trying to compete or replace with other existing programs, but really working in partnership and community with them. Thank you.
Ellen, you are all good. I'm new to sharing screens and being the Wizard of Oz. So that was just me going, oops, sorry.
No problem.
So we actually do have some questions queued up. But before we do that, what I would love is for folks to drop their questions in the chat, and let's spend some time on those. And then if we have time, we can go to the other questions that we had. And I see my pal, Steve Batista. Hi, Steve, from Orange County, said, what a great design and outcomes. Congratulations. So drop your questions in the chat. Or not. Are those amazing Skyline results also happening at the other schools in your district, the other colleges?
That's a great question. So CSM and Kenyatta really are are receiving technical assistance right now and support from Skyline College to ramp up all of the elements of their model. So they're not technically under ASAP replication, but they did have Promise Scholars from the fall 2018 cohort, and they did see an uptick in the number of in the completion rate and graduation rate, as well as transfer rate at both colleges. It's not quadrupling, but it's close to doubling for them. And so we do expect their fall 2019 and fall 2020 cohorts to reach more of the Skyline levels.
So there's some kudos in here. There's a question for Jackie. Would you please say again how you're getting funding for your program? And is there a plan for when the funding ends? And actually, I'd like to throw that to both of you because we had a question too, like, how do you pay for all this?
Yeah. Okay. So the computer science faculty time now is in general fund. The extra supports from like the person that works at Hartnell and the person that works at CSUMB, sort of keeping the cohort administrative aspects together. Those folks are paid by grant funding. Our scholarships were initially funded by Mr. Matsui, the big, huge ones. And then 5 years into it, he funded us for 5 years. And then this last cohort, we funded with some funding from Google and some funding from other NSF also. And then we are also a recipient of the first innovation award. So some of that helped us sort of scale the piece of the programs or in the early day, but now we've sort of weaned off of some of that initial support, and that's why we have to sort of right size the scholarship and kind of make something that is scalable. So the $15,000 a year, if you break it down, it's about $15,000 per the degree. It's $5,000 a year, so it makes it a lot more doable. And so we've had to tweak some of those aspects of it. The big challenge is moving the entire program over to general fund. And so, we'll continue to seek sources of funding, but that is one of the cases I think that we all have to sort of advocate for, that the cohort models, because the old sort of thinking or conventional thinking is cohort models are very expensive. But the flip side is, well, what we're doing is pretty expensive and it's really not working. So it's sort of like reallocating some more GF funds into the things that are working for our students. And that's, I know it's a big challenge to have, but I think that's where we're headed with, moving some more of that support over to permanent funding. And I think lastly, to really work with the idea that endowments and philanthropy could really help support long-term some of these very innovative approaches that we have. So always partnering with philanthropy, because that is a huge opportunity. Right now, community colleges are a very small segment of the market of all of higher ed philanthropy. And higher ed philanthropy is huge in this country. It is absolutely huge. And we are babies in this. So it's kind of our time and our opportunity to really work with our foundations and our philanthropists in our community to build endowments to support some of this work. Same thing with Skyline, I would say, with the Promise.
Fantastic. Yeah, Ellen, how are you funding?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, during our preparation for replication, we received a Laura and John Arnold grant that allowed us to hire folks to flesh out our team. We do rely a little bit on general fund monies. I will say also, San Mateo County is a well-resourced district. So we do have more flexibility than other districts and want to recognize and acknowledge that. But the vast majority of our funds come from AB 19, as well as a Chancellor's Innovation Grant that allowed us to expand that replication of the ASAP model to our sister colleges. And I will mention that we are also providing technical assistance for exploring ASAP replication at South Lake Tahoe, Pasadena, and Cuesta College. So they are also sort of involved with the ASAP model as well. And so AB 19 is the big chunk for us. And in terms of cost per student, it's roughly $3,200 annually to support a student when you combine the sort of counseling support, staffing support with the direct resources to students. That is a lot of money for community colleges. But when you look at how much money and time is spent, both from the institutional perspective, but then from students' perspective, sort of stuck in our systems, not understanding how to navigate how to complete in a timely fashion, that's more expensive, right? So cost per student is high, but when you look at it from like a cost per degree perspective, then you start seeing efficiencies build up with those cohorted programs like the ASAP model.
Thank you. And then there's another question specifically for Skyline. What did the cohorts look like? Are the classes linked? How are the students grouped together?
Yeah, so it's a big program, so we don't have like very specific like interests. So students can come in and be exploring students, not quite sure what degree they want. They can be absolutely focused on getting through in 2 years in a nursing degree. So they come in with a variety of different interests and backgrounds. The way in which we develop community is really by the counselor. So we try to match counselors with students based off of our meta majors. So those groupings of majors. So we have, for instance, a counselor who works with our STEM students, particularly a really strong allied health expert. So really looking at our nursing students and building out programs and pathways for them. In terms of our academic link between counseling, community building, and academics, we work with core effective faculty across all of our disciplines, but really focused on our common GEs, like think our, golden four, like our math, our English, our communications. And then we have some of those high enrolled courses for us that's in business administration and psychology and bio. And we reserve portions of the class. So we don't reserve the whole class, but we reserve portions of a class for students to enroll who are Promise Scholars. So those seats are reserved for Promise only students. And that allows us to make sure that students get into those core gateway and opportunity classes that get them to their degree faster. Students also have priority registration, which helps out with that as well.
Fantastic. So this is great. So what we're seeing is kind of a model of one model at Hartnell is more like really tight on the actual logistics of the cohort from the student perspective. It's, we're all in this doing everything together, and a much more loose kind of idea of cohorting the students from the Skyline model. But, and I will keep my eye on the chat for more questions. But, one of the big questions for me looking at systems reform and redesign across the state is how does this idea of these cohorts, either tight or loose, how does that fit within a guided pathways framework. And either Ellen or Jackie or both of you, feel free to jump in.
I think for I'll go, Ellen, and thank you for that question, Naomi. For us, we see the meta majors and the guided pathways as a great opportunity to scale up the innovation and the learnings that we've had with the cohort models over the last several years. So those practices and being able to inform the inquiry groups and everybody that's working on college redesign guided pathways at our college. So I really do think that the cohort is if you will, a huge beta test on what meta majors could do if we intentionally set up the meta majors as large cohorts. So you could have a large meta major, but you could have a cohort family-like setups within that huge meta major. So I think that's for us, we felt a very exciting opportunity to scale up, given the entire system and the college-wide, statewide system coming behind that idea. So we see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with Jackie on this piece as well. I think for us too, one of the benefits that the Promise Scholars program has had on the campus is that our program requires a lot of intense student data tracking. And as a result of that, we have found a variety of different things, challenges and problems happening across the institution due to students' experience, both in terms of quantitative feedback for us, as well as the qualitative, like student focus groups and surveys about their experience at Skyline, that has allowed us to go to various spaces across campus to discuss how do we implement more student-ready policies and processes. So that has looked, gone from everything happening in instruction. So we track students' course success rates and sort of identify areas where, maybe we work with our instructional deans and those instructional faculty who might be struggling with supporting their students equitably and really engaging in conversations about that and how to better support our students, to being sort of almost like I don't want to say testing ground, but a place where we can sort of pilot different pieces that align with our guided pathways implementation to see how well they work. That could be like we did some 1 year sort of blocked courses pilots where for all of our incoming allied health students, we really laid out which classes they would take, and we consolidated their coursework so that they wouldn't be on campus from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., that they would really have time for studying, for working, for family responsibilities. So there's a lot of things like that that allowed us to sort of test out and implement within Promise to see what we could do for the greater student population at Skyline too.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll add in, this is probably obvious, but whatever kinds of groupings we make with students, whether it's meta majors, whether it's like affinity groups, whether it's a program specific cohort, whether it's a grouping like Promise Scholars, we can use those groupings then to create community, to deliver services, to measure outcomes and measure the success of interventions. So yeah, all of that. Yes. We have some other questions in the chat. Corey is asking, what are some of the unique differences between Promise Scholars program and EOP&S?
Yeah, I will say that there's a bunch of similarity. I would say some of the core differences is that we are really intensely focused on completion, and EOPS is one of their prerogatives is completion, but it is really also that holistic support for students as well. We also have a different counseling model. And so with our tiered support, students receive supports adjusted to where they're at. With EOPS, they have standard appointments across the semester and standard requirements, regardless of sort of where they're at on their timeline.
Great. And then there's another question that also refers to EOPS. Is there any focus on changes to the classroom instruction, or are the efforts more outside of the class?
For us, we definitely work with instruction. I think that piece is more complex. So I would like to strengthen our ties and our ability to support, but we do work really intentionally with our instructional deans when we start seeing issues arise, either through student feedback or just through data that we start to see semester to semester. And we also work with our CTTL team for professional development series in conjunction with instructional deans as well.
Thank you. Jackie, is there any focus on instruction in the CSN3?
Supplemental instruction, is that what you're referring to?
And what, any, like, inside the classroom, the instructors who work with this cohort, are they doing anything different? Is there a focus on supporting them?
Oh yeah. I think the Friday piece really serves as the day where, and it's a full day, right? 8 to 5, a full day where they capture a lot of the other support systems that they may need. But yes, there is a lot of support there's a lot of supplemental instruction. There's always a person there that's providing extra support. We have another full-time person that just dedicates themselves to the extra academic support.
Great,
And
thank you.
support, yeah.
Thank you. And then there's another question. What does the communication plan look like to provide regular outreach to students? What are the mechanisms that are in place if a student is difficult to reach?
We use Instagram, we use text messages, we used email. They get tons of communication from us from day one. We have peer leaders and a retention specialist who do regular calls. And then for students who have a history of no showing to their appointments or not completing their engagements monthly, those students will be directed to have a conversation with our retention specialist or peer leaders to sort of see what's going on. And then referred to doing really warm handoffs to folks. Because most of the time, if a student's disengaged, it's not because they don't want to be involved. It's because something's happening in their life that is, pulling them away from sort of their academic responsibilities. And so we really try to work with them to make sure that they're receiving sort of that support that they need to be able to refocus, whether that's going to our Spark Center or Career Center, emergency food grants, things like that. And then if a student, we have sort of a 30, 60, 90-day policy where students who we haven't heard from at all despite outreach at a 30-day mark, a 60-day mark, and a 90-day mark will get notification from me, sort of the laying down the law, I guess, just being like, hey, like we got to have you come in and engage. You need to chat with your counselor, let us know what's going on. If they haven't engaged at all at the 90-day mark and still don't communicate with us, then we will exit them from the program, just because that engagement piece is really critical to the success of our program.
Thanks. Jackie, same question. They're in a super tight cohort, so people notice, like, when somebody doesn't show up.
Escape. Yeah. There's just really, honestly, they spend every day 8 to 5 together. Um, so I would, really kind of just the example there really is of the family environment, like a really tight family, right? Almost probably to the point of obnoxious, um, where there's a lot of peer support and a lot of staff support. And because they're physically together, literally all the time, that there's no real need for doing extra outreach. It's really built into the model that they just stay very close knit community there.
And there's all kinds of really cool evidence that you can collect for that connectedness. I had a cohort of students. They were only cohorted for one semester, but one of the students was a hockey player, ice hockey, and he found out that the other students didn't know how to ice skate, and he was like, "Oh, that's what we're doing this weekend. You guys are all coming. We're going to the rink. I'm going to teach you how to ice skate." Or they would do bonfires together, or sign up for other classes together. So that kind of evidence it's like super, super fun to collect.
And they've been through a lot. Like one of the first cohort, one of the cohort members, actually, this is so sad. She was from Watsonville traveling to Salinas and in the bus, and she actually got run over. She passed away. And the cohort really, like, out of that, like, they just pulled together. Next year, another student, he lost his dad. Like, they just really pulled together when things, which, life tragedies happen, and that connectedness really brings them up. It really brings them up together.
Wow. So we do have a couple other questions in the chat. We have from a faculty perspective, what type of involvement did they have specifically with students other than their classroom instruction? So are there opportunities for the faculty to hang out, to just do other things with the students outside of class?
For us, we don't have a really strong tie outside of the classroom, but faculty who are involved across campus in other programs or with our Student Life Center, we always partner with interested faculty members on workshops and series of events that our Promise Scholars are encouraged to go to or sometimes required to go to, so they can engage that way. We pre-COVID, we were working with CTTL and our Guided Pathways director to begin to develop a Promise Scholars faculty community, and sort of provide more of a community on the faculty side. But things have kind of been stalled with that until we're kind of back on campus. But you're right in suggesting that it's more of a counseling and student services team rather than instruction, though we are working on trying to strengthen that as well.
Jackie?
Yeah, so faculty go with the students to, they actually, faculty are very involved with industry. And in that, they actually do a lot of interaction with industry. So faculty engage with the students alongside. So both in field trips, right now, they're not in person, they're virtual, but also in industry panels and things like that. So the faculty are really involved with the extra activities related to the cohort and the cohort success. Very, very involved.
Fantastic. And then this is the last question we're going to take, and then I'm going to have some links in the chat for folks as we wrap up. But how are these programs promoted to high school community, counselors, students, teachers? How do you recruit? How do you let folks know that this is all possible?
For us, we have a really strong outreach and counseling department at Skyline College, which has created a high school liaison program with all of our feeder high schools, where we have Skyline College counselors actually go to our feeder high schools in person, now in COVID online, and support students in completing all of their matriculation steps on site. And so those counselors and that team have all the information they need to sort of advertise and market the program to our feeder high schools. And then we work really closely with our outreach team to make sure that we're beyond our feeder high schools. We're really reaching out to core organizations across San Mateo to make sure that there's a lot of awareness. But we did a ton of, in the very beginning for our 2018 inaugural cohort, our marketing team did mall posters and radio spots and Facebook and Instagram advertisement just to get the word out, to build overall community awareness. And now we're really at this point focused more on those like feeder high schools too.
Great. Jackie?
Yeah,
How do you sign them up?
yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ellen. Okay, so for us, we work a lot with our college pathways team. We do active recruitment with our high schools, but more importantly, I think a little bit more outside the box, we have worked with a community organizing nonprofit. They're called the Center for Community Advocacy, and they have built a program. If you guys are familiar with the Health Promotores model, we have built a Promotores model around higher education. So it's more of the parents and the youth. There's a youth organizing team, and then there's a parent organizing team, and they go out and do a lot of non-traditional outreach in the community in places where, you know, us as college professionals would probably not go, you know, churches, gatherings, you know, in housing, like low-income housing complexes, things like that. So that's how we get a little bit deeper into the community, but all the traditional outreach that's done with the high schools, it's definitely something important to us. And to be honest with you, a lot of word of mouth. The students tell their brothers and sisters and cousins. And so what we're seeing a lot in the cohorts is younger siblings coming in into the cohort model as well.
Oh, that's so great.
And
That's so
they're very
great.
active on Twitter too. Like if you go to social media for the CSN3 program, they're pretty active.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Both of you are on, oh, Ellen, are you on Twitter? Jackie's on Twitter. Your colleges are on Twitter. And so we can continue the conversation there too. I did put a link to a Menti. So it's a way to give us feedback. So if folks could be so kind as just to take a moment or two and do that Menti survey, we find it incredibly helpful to keep improving. And once we've, since we've gone online, it's a little bit of a new world for us. So we really, really appreciate that feedback. And then I'm also going to put a link in here to the next session where you can find all the links for the sessions that are going to start at 10:50. And there is one more question since we've got a minute. It's really clear that student service support for all of this is a key component. How do you change your student counselor ratio to make these cohorts successful? How'd you get such a small student to counselor ratio?
More money, more hires. We had to hire more counselors. So our maximum ratio with Promise scholars is 1 to 150. Our general counselors run about one counselor to about 400 students. So it is definitely much more of an intensive staffing structure. But as mentioned before, it's like that is a critical component, and all of our student surveys and feedback support that the counselor is the most important element of the program from their view. So they come in for the money, for the financial support, and then realize that counseling relationship is so critical to keep them motivated, keep them feeling supported, as well as just the general support to navigate all of our systems towards completion.
Jackie, the same, more money?
Yeah. I mean, we really, because the courses are sequenced already, in the cohort model, the counselors really help with more of, more on the psychological end, if you will, and the affective domain, and really counting on the counselors as partners. And but it doesn't really add load to them because the sequencing's already been done.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. If we were in person, the crowd would be, going wild with a round of applause. So accept our virtual applause here. Lots of thank yous in the chat. We're gonna have a 10-minute break. I put the links in there to find the Zoom link for the next session you'd like to go to. This session is also going to be repeated at a new link. I'm going to keep this Zoom open for just another couple of minutes so people can go back in the chat and copy those. I also put the recordings from the last time. But yay, thank you everybody so much. Thank you. And we will see you all next time. Enjoy your next sessions.
Thank you, everyone.
Jackie and Ellen, if you want to run off and get some coffee or something, you've got a few minutes.
Thank you.
Got to change the little one.